Welcome to MMA Fancast. My name's Luke, and I am joined by friend of the show, Gabrielle. Gabrielle, welcome back.
What's up? Thank you for having me.
It is nice having you for the third time. We
I'm
had
excited.
you on before your 247 fighting championship fight, which seems like yesterday, but it was actually almost a year ago, August of 2021. And I had you on before and after that fight, which was a very nice TKO, I guess, TKO in round one. And I was cage side, so I got to see it. And you were fighting a pretty experienced opponent. And so it was a great thing. Take us from there. What have you been doing? You do have a fight coming up, which we want to talk about, but just kind of fill the viewers in from August of last year.
Yeah. After that fight, I feel like we might have talked about it even the last time, we did. I said I didn't want this long layover. Here we are a year later, finally got a fight, but I actually had 4 fights fall through within the last year. Various reasons, none of which I could control. So it was a bit frustrating, but it seems like I've been training for a while, so I'm excited to get back in there.
Well, that is great. And yes, you did bring up that the last time you were on the show, you were sharing about wanting to stay busy because your debut fight was in 2020, and then you fought in 2021, and now it's been about 10 months since you fought. You bring up a thing that can be hard for people on the outside that watch UFC or Bellator or one, that at the amateur level, there's nothing sort of making somebody fight. And that's okay, that's the goal of amateur, but it can make matchups fall through, injuries, other things. And it's not really until the pro level where there's kind of some motivation there. So how has training at Scranton MMA been going for you?
Training's been great. I was supposed to fight in March for Maverick. So we had 2 guys that actually did fight March. So the 3 of us all went through camp together. Unfortunately, mine fell through, but the 2 of them went on, did really well. And then for this one, there's actually 3 of us from Scranton MMA on the card. So it's been really nice. Like, this is the first time like going through camp that, I'm kind of not in it on my own. And I'm also not on the card by myself. So it's just been like a little bit of a different vibe, just pushing each other and picking on each other here and there. But it's been fun. I've really been enjoying this camp.
It's nice that you bring up sort of that when you have multiple people from the same gym training for the same fight, it feels a bit more almost like a party, like you're all developing, you're all building. Okay, maybe not a party, maybe like graduation where everybody's working hard to get to the same end goal. Whereas a lot of gyms, including your gym, it's kind of like sporadic. You might have something that nobody else has. They might have something that you don't have. How close is this to your hometown? Because you're going to be fighting at Split Rock Resort, Maverick 20, August 6th. So I would think Split Rock is pretty close to Scranton.
Yeah, it's about from the gym, it's only about 40 minutes. And I actually live towards that direction. So from my actual house, it's even closer. So I'm excited to be close to home finally.
Yeah, that is nice. I got to meet you, and you were 3 hours away from home because you were out in Johnstown. I would.
Yeah, it was a little bit farther. I think it was like closer to 4, a little over 4 out there.
Yeah,
that was
not really close.
That was a hike.
Not really close. Although 247 Fighting Championships is having a fight out in Canonsburg, which is even more away. So I'm thrilled that Maverick is a promotion that kind of is more in your area. Under an hour is pretty much your backyard when it comes to MMA. So that's really fantastic. What have you been kind of working to develop? I saw some pictures of you on Facebook of working what looked like kind of like a duck under cross combo, sort of some combo work in striking. How has the training been going for you?
Just over the last year, we've spent a lot of time focusing honestly more on the grappling and like wrestling transition side. I felt, and talking with my coaches after the last 2 fights, it was like, I was, a lot more striking and just didn't have the opportunity to do, any of those, grappling exchanges that we may have worked on. So I knew that was a major hole in my game. So we spent a lot of time doing that on top of, strike. That's my favorite. So pretty easy for me to get in there and get my pad work in and get our technique in. But, specifically just working a lot of closing the distance and kind of finding my style and where I want to be. So a lot going on.
Well, I give you and your coaches at Scranton MMA a lot of credit in coaching, it's usually, particularly in MMA, but any coaching, and I know you're a coach, we'll get to that in a second, but it's always easy to kind of encourage your athlete to train more of what they're good at or enjoy. And then there's value in that, right? We want to reward and encourage people that are already good at something. But one of the things with MMA is the coaches that push you past that. Sure, you're clearly good at striking and stand up. I mean, finishing anybody, particularly a fairly well established, experienced fighter in the first round, isn't easy. And you were dominant in that fight. But to push you to focus on the grappling and the exchange part that you're not quite as good at, I think really does show high level. It's also you're 2-0. This is in Pennsylvania. So I'm assuming that means it's still an amateur. You haven't notched to the advanced amateur. For people that may not know that, in Pennsylvania, really every state has their own rules, but Pennsylvania rules are pretty restrictive. I think they're good because they're designed to help people develop. Sometimes they can be a little annoying, but I think it has good intention. You have to be either 2-1 or 3-0 in order to advance to advanced amateur. So you're at a point right now where even though you're 2-0, they will not sanction you for advanced amateur. And it will be exciting after this fight that you'll be able to advance to advanced amateur. So that's pretty
I'm excited.
Have you been, last time you were on the show, we talked about you being, I'm thinking it was a middle school coach. It might've been JV or high school coach. Have you still been coaching, or are you kind of out of that world? Because I know you used to be coaching.
Yeah, so I'm actually a college coach. I'm one of the, it's all right.
I do just a couple interviews. I am so sorry. I apologize to all of your athletes and to you. Give me the college name again and what you coach.
Yeah, so I'm one of the assistant basketball coaches at Wilkes University. So
I
graduated
apologize
from there.
to
Yeah,
you
no,
at
you're
Wilkes
good.
University. A little bit better than JV. I apologize. But that is something I wanted to bring up because we talked about it last time, because I've coached track and field for many years and was big into the jumps. And I think that when you're coaching athletes and when you're coaching with technique in mind, even though basketball and jumps and track seem completely removed from MMA, when you're used to, as a coach, breaking down technique, I found it very relevant to take my eyes and my mind that was used to breaking down technique and looking at development and moving it into a completely different world. Have you found that as well, when as your brain is training people in basketball, that it also helps you pick up on things in MMA?
Oh yeah, no doubt. And like, I mean, I think there's just some basic athletic movements that cross over between all sports, regardless of what you're doing. So I've been able to pick different things there. And then, I think that coaching at Wilkes has helped me. I coach here, I teach classes here. So having that experience has definitely helped carry over things to here in terms of breaking technique down, or how we're going to break technique down, or even, calling an audible with people that may come into class and maybe you had this whole plan. It's just not going to work out today. So we kind of got to play it by ear in that aspect. But, tons of lessons I've taken away from coaching, probably more than I did as a player, honestly.
Yeah, I found that in my own life too. I will always say this, and of course you're a great athlete, much better than I ever was, but coaching is a sport in the sense that there's mental prep, there's physical prep, there's probably more, like you said, playing it by ear. I know as a coach, you have to coach each person differently too. As an athlete, and you are both, as an athlete, you have to figure out how you work. As a coach, you have to figure out how 6 or 8 other people want to know the same information. So there's a lot going on there. I tend to think that basketball and soccer, for me, having watched a lot of athletes transition into MMA, I think basketball and soccer have a big advantage on the feet because it's all about footwork in basketball and it's all about footwork in soccer. And it appears, how much more comfortable do you think, and obviously I know you've been working on wrestling, but to get back to that basketball, how comfortable do you think your feet are? And I think that relates a lot to striking. You were very fluid, you're very dynamic, being able to strike going forward, backward, laterally. There's a lot of movements that just hitting a heavy bag doesn't give you. But in basketball or in soccer, there's constant manning up against one-on-one against another person and kind of moving around an opponent, which I think is invaluable in MMA.
Yeah, no, I think it doesn't. Like I said, like mentioning earlier with those like basic movements, like your footwork, your base, we stress that all the time. It's everything. You know, if you don't have a solid base, if we're not stepping out or cutting the right angle, it could throw an entire combination off. And that's the same thing with basketball. You know, if your feet aren't under you, you can't really effectively shoot the ball. Of course, we see, you know, Steph Curry falling out of bounds and all these guys, but at the level that you're genuinely working with, you know, your feet and your base is everything. And I think a lot of those have similar movements. And I think that's why it made the transition, you know, so easy for me. And that's why I picked up striking that much easier.
Certainly. And being balanced, you mentioned that being balanced, knowing where your feet are, knowing body control. I brought up soccer. I'm actually not a huge fan of soccer, but one of the greatest strikers in the lower weights in MMA was Jose Aldo. And he was such a big soccer fan, being from Brazil and being, you know, kind of in that world, even when he was the world record holder before, of course, he lost it to some Irishman. The cool part was he was still trying out for the local pro soccer team, and he already had a deal with Dana that he's like, if they take me, I'm letting go of my crown and I'm just going, you know. But he talked about how a lot of his kicks from Muay Thai and sort of that power kick came from knowing where his feet is and being able to transition his weight. Same thing with punching for you, being very good at where your hands are, I think is relevant. Now, let's get to your opponent. We don't know a lot about her. That's kind of the world of amateur MMA, and that's fine. And that's kind of one of the things. But one thing you know about her, she could come out and shoot in the first 10 seconds. We've seen that happen, but we know that she's had some amateur USA boxing fights. Do you think that's likely going to test your stand-up in a way that maybe other people haven't?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to assume that, you know, given her background, that she's going to want to do a lot more striking. And obviously, like, point boxing is very different than striking for MMA. I've actually been working with some other boxers in the area, and I'm traveling to Manhattan in 2 days to go work with some boxers out there just to kind of get a feel for, you know, what she may be trying to do. But again, like, we're always talking about it, you know, she could do anything coming out there. So, you know, we're expecting heavy pressure forward, but, you know, she decides to shoot a takedown. That's fine too. We'll be ready for that too.
Well, I think that is the exciting part of MMA. Another thing is I still refer to it as dirty boxing. I really shouldn't. That term is developed because in boxing, any type of plum, any type of holding on the head, holding on, trapping the arm, any of that is considered dirty because it's banned. So that's not at all illegal in MMA. And we've seen that. I don't know if you've watched any bare knuckle fighting.
Yeah.
They tend to put a lot of their stuff up there. I find it, and we've been seeing this now, that a pure boxer goes into bare knuckle and an MMA fighter almost always beats them. And I think it's because in pure boxing, an MMA fighter probably should lose, but in the ability, now in that boxing, they're only allowed one plum, unlimited. In MMA, you're allowed two plums or two arms, unlimited. But I think it really is an advantage, even against a better boxer, to be able to be used to trapping and holding and grabbing. How much of that have you been kind of working and practicing, as most traditional boxers want like a fluidity and a movement and sort of pretty strikes, in the sense of, you called them point striking, very accurate, as opposed to a wearing, grinding method?
Yeah. So we've been working a lot closing the distance, and not necessarily going for a takedown of my own, but controlling as long as we could, and then, you know, escaping to whatever I needed to do. But I think taking a little bit of a different style than I've taken in past fights, where it was like, we just want to stay standing. We just want to stay standing. You know, that's where we want to be. Or, you know, this fight, if it does go to the ground, you know, we're okay with that too. But yeah, we've done a lot of stuff, you know, either closing distance or jamming and controlling their pressure, and just quick angle changes. You know, if it means she's going to, you know, chase me around the cage for that first,
Yeah.
you know, round, then so be it. You know, that's what we're looking for. But yeah.
Well, I love quick angle changes. How, and you might not have ever seen it because it's been 5 or 6 years now, but are you aware, and have you seen that famous sequence where Holly Holm is just not there when Ronda Rousey comes forward and kind of hugs the cage? And of course, it wasn't a good look for Ronda Rousey. I'm not bashing Ronda Rousey at all here, but that's the type of side to side movement, lateral movement, that boxing or any type of quick foot movement from soccer or basketball really exploits. And are you aware of that sequence and kind of how valuable it is to be able to move around and not just go front and back?
Yeah, no, I know exactly right. It's funny. We actually just did a drill last week, working something similar, just working with someone being heavy forward. And we were working a check three to the outside, but same thing, not necessarily looking to punish with that three, but just taking ourselves off that angle and then re-entering at a different angle. So, we work angles a lot in our striking, just I feel like, it's super common to just be straight in, straight back out, and then you're circling around the outside. So I feel like as best that we can work that, whether it's with our advanced students, our beginner students, like that's just putting them one step ahead of anyone else who they may compete against. So we try as much as we can to do that.
Well, and I think that's another reason why I like having local sort of up and coming fighters on the show, because if you follow MMA a lot, particularly at the UFC level, you hear of these big gyms. But what people don't know is these big gyms are businesses. It doesn't mean they're bad. They have literally dorms built in. They have people flying in from all over the world. And that changes the way they do things. Some of these big gyms, like Winklejohn, it's no offense to Coach Wink, but he won't even see somebody until they've been there for like a year. And I'm not trying to say anything bad. It's just that's the way the gym has to work when you've got 3 or 4, former champions and current champions. What's interesting about Scranton MMA is you are absolutely right. Teaching more advanced basics at a basic level shortens up people's learning curves. I've worked with athletes that have been, let's say, striking for years, and you're still trying to unteach things. And you're thinking, well, how do they get this far? But a lot of times bigger gyms have to just run people through group classes without really dissecting small things. So I think that goes a long way. What classes if somebody's watching this and they want their kids or their adults to come to Scranton MMA and have you, because you're an up and coming MMA fighter, what classes do you run? Is it kids? Is it adults? What are you coaching?
So me personally, I teach part of the beginner striking classes. My coach teaches the other half of the classes. And then I teach one of the advanced striking classes. And then I also teach a beginner MMA class, our mine specifically, but we do have kids classes here. I'm just usually watching on the outside. My nephew's in kids classes here, so I'm usually watching him and working with him, but you won't have me, but we have a lot of other great instructors here. So if you're interested in something else, definitely come by.
Well, absolutely. I hope whoever watches this brings their kids or themselves. And we've seen that even at high levels sometimes. Oh man, I'm forgetting her name and I apologize. I was watching an MMA review where they were talking about a female UFC fighter who was in her late 30s when she got an MMA because she was taking her kid to an MMA class and was like, I think I can do this. So sometimes parents get involved in things because their kids are involved in it, which is obviously always kind of fun. And I'm glad you're so involved and so connected to things. I wanted to talk a little bit, since I like talking shop with you because you're a coach and your brain kind of works that way. In BJJ, and I'm going to word these questions so that we're not giving anything away for your game plan. What was the defense? What was the submission defense that you first were like, I've got to master that? For me, it was getting out of rear naked choke, right? But what was the first defense for a submission that you were like, I need to work on this, and then kind of feeling like, okay, I'm starting to get better at this? Because what people don't understand in BJJ is you just tap out 100 times a night. I mean, they say 100 times a night. You just bang out, you're tapping out all the time. So what was the first defense that you were like, oh my goodness, I'm actually progressing in my skills?
Definitely an armbar defense.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So my first camp, I had a really bad habit. If someone, I was in mount or I was in guard, of just like hard posting.
Yes.
And at that point, everyone you're rolling with is, purple belt, brown belt. My coaches are both black belts. So it was just very easy for them to step over and grab that arm. It got to the point where it's the running joke in the gym now for the armbar defense. But every time I get armbarred, I have to do 15 burpees.
Oh, no.
So it made me learn armbar defense really quick. But, I'm definitely much more confident in that area now than I was back then. But yeah, it's still from that first camp, it's still the running joke around here.
Well, that's another hats off to you. The mental toughness and spirit in particularly any of the grappling exchanges and BJJ is, once a weakness is known, and obviously your training partners know your weaknesses, they're going to keep going to it. And it's the only way to make somebody better, right? Is to keep hitting their weaknesses over and over again. Kind of funny that they came up with their own rule with the burpees. I hope they didn't make you do that on the first day, but obviously
Oh
over
God, it was
time.
every day. It was every day.
Oh my goodness, that's
Yeah.
great. I
Every
love it.
day.
And so as a follow-up question, what was the first, it might not have been your first submission, but what was the first submission where you were like, I love working to this position? Like some people, it's kind of strange to think of because they haven't fought in a while, but the Diaz brothers have a unique way of finishing a leg triangle from mount, right? They're kind of unique in that they'll set it up underneath in the traditional guard, and then they'll grab a leg and kind of lift and elevate. So that way they're in sort of a high mount. If they finish the triangle, that's great. That's dominant. If they don't finish the triangle, they're still in high mount. But you could kind of tell, okay, they're so good at triangles, they sort of made it their own. What was the first submission where you were kind of like, I love hitting this, I can work to this and have some confidence in it?
It's probably a toss up. I really like working either a Kimura or an Americana from side control. I find myself there a lot. And then even like I said, like you were talking about, if you don't get it, I just feel like it leads to so many other things off of, your partner's defense. Whether they roll, you can easily step over to a modified mount from there. I think that opens up a lot of things, and just taking the hand away from the face at that point. But I also like the omoplata if we want to switch roles there, something where, I'm working where I'm from my back, definitely the omoplata from there.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely cool. And a nice tie-in when you talk about the omoplata. I used to watch a lot of the Jackson Wink training videos, which is why I know kind of a lot about their program, but this is all YouTube stuff. Anyhow, he had a whole program about using the omoplata to roll your opponent to you, because you control a lot of their weight. You can lift under and roll. So it's a very dynamic. You're using a lot of your legs, which is cool. Any of the cross body side control attacks, like you mentioned, and because you said that's a lot of hip. If you can pin their hips, you control them. And then from there, depending if they don't defend well, you also have the side triangle choke or the arm triangle. If they get their arm up by their head in a defense, if they take their arm in, which will often happen. So very cool and exciting. I wasn't trying to give anything away.
Oh no, it's all good.
It's really fun to kind of see you develop in the couple interviews we've had. I can't wait to kind of have you on afterwards, talk about what happened in the fight. We want to push the fact that people can get tickets. How can they get tickets from you? You still have time to sell tickets August 6th at the Split Rock Resorts Maverick 20 to watch you and two other, Jesse Burke and who else is the Hunter May?
Jesse Burke, yep, and Hunter May. Yep. So anywhere you need tickets, you could go to Maverick's website and you can put any of our names in at checkout and you can get them online. Or if you're in the area and you want to swing by the gym, we have tickets here too.
That's always very important. So even if you don't particularly know any of these fighters, I say when you're on a website buying tickets, if fans are just buying them because they want to be there, always pick a fighter's name. It helps them, even if they don't know who you are, even if you don't know, just scroll down and just pick a fighter. But,
yes, we appreciate it.
Of course, but in this case, Maverick MMA, I think it's great. When I was running a gym, the most fighters we ever had on one card was 4. And I think between 2 and 4 in that range is just a perfect number. You're right in the middle. They were 3. I think it really helps the overall attitude in preparation and also the night of. So a big congratulations to the other 2. I'm going to reach out to them now, see if I can get them on to kind of follow Scranton MMA, because you guys are doing great stuff. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Can't wait to have you on afterwards to talk about how it goes. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
You got it. Have a good one.
You too.